Welcome to Topic 1, Lecture 2. In a previous lecture, we introduced ourselves to Darwinian medicine and reviewed two medical examples of defenses and defects. In Lecture 2, we examined several psychological examples of defects and defenses by looking at depression from an evolutionary perspective. You'll recall that we defined Darwinian medicine as an evolutionary approach to the study of medicine that emphasizes the distinction between defenses and defects. In the previous lecture, we examined several physical examples and asked ourselves whether such physical traits as the human capacity to sneeze, fever, and iron deficiency show evidence of being defects or defenses. Next, we turn our attention to a psychological example and look at depression. Is depression an example of a defect or a defense? Depression, of course, is often viewed as a sign that our mind is not working properly. Evolutionary psychologists are cautious about over-applying the concept of adaptation. Some aspects of human behavior and mental life are simply noise or some random effect, or simply a byproduct of an adaptation. Consider, for example, postpartum depression. 13 to 19% of women experience depression in the first 6 months after delivery. Is depression an adaptation? To address this question, it's helpful to start by first making a distinction between proximate functions and ultimate functions. The question of proximate functions asks, how does depression operate? What activates depression? What rules, if any, does depression seem to obey? The question of ultimate functions, on the other hand, asks, what adaptive problems, if any, did depression evolve to solve? In other words, how did depression enhance the survival and reproduction of our human ancestors who experienced these states? To appreciate the distinction between the proximate and ultimate functions of depression, it might be helpful to first look at some of the symptoms of a major depressive episode. According to the 4th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, in order to be diagnosed with a major depressive episode, a person must have experienced at least 5 of the following 9 symptoms, and these symptoms must occur for the same 2 weeks or more, and they must occur most of the time, almost every day. Moreover, this change has to be a difference from their prior level of functioning. The first and most obvious symptom is, of course, depressed mood. For children and adolescents, this may be in the form of an irritable mood. A second symptom is a significantly reduced level of interest or pleasure in most or all activities. This is often referred to as anhedonia. Another symptom is a considerable loss or gain of weight. We're talking about a 5% or more change in weight in a month when the person is not dieting. This may also be experienced as an increase or decrease in appetite. For children, they may not gain an expected amount of weight. Another symptom is difficulty falling or staying asleep, insomnia, or sleeping more than usual, hypersomnia. Yet another symptom is behavior that is agitated or slowed down. Others should be able to observe this. Feeling fatigued or displaying diminished energy is another symptom of a major depressive episode. Another symptom is thoughts of worthlessness or extreme guilt, but the feelings of guilt cannot be about being depressed. The 9th and final symptom involves frequent thoughts of death or suicide or attempted suicide. The thoughts of death or suicide may be with or without a specific plan. You will recall that to be diagnosed with a major depressive episode, a person must have experienced at least 5 of the 9 symptoms. Evolutionary psychologists have explored a number of possible ultimate functions of low mood or depression. First, we'll consider Maguire and Sapolsky's work on depression in non-human primates, where they examine how low mood functions to help resolve conflicts and hierarchies. We'll then examine Randy Nessie's work on depression as a means of fostering disengagement from commitments to unreachable goals, where an individual is wasting time and energy pursuing a goal that they're not likely to achieve. Finally, we'll look at Ed Hagen's work on regulating patterns of investment, where he explains postpartum depression as a strategy that females employ to increase investment from the father of their offspring. Psychiatrist Michael Maguire and neuroendocrinologist Robert Sapolsky have developed a model of depression in non-human primates. They argued that when a primate becomes the dominant male, his serotonin levels increase. When that primate loses status relative to others, they become subdominant, and their serotonin levels decrease. McGuire argues that the ensuing low mood or depression solves the problem of fighting a losing battle for dominance. In this manner, depression functions to prevent an animal from fighting a battle that it cannot win. The final evolutionary model of depression suggests that depression fosters disengagement from commitments to unreachable goals. This model is based upon Randy Nesse's work on depression in clinical patients, where he has shown that low mood or depression occurs when an individual is pursuing an unreachable goal. Nesse argues that the ensuing low mood solves the problem of not wasting energy and resources pursuing a goal that is not reachable. The final evolutionary model of depression that we'll consider suggests that depression regulates patterns of investment. This theory is based upon Ed Hagen's work on postpartum depression. Hagen argues that sometimes low mood or depression occurs when a woman who has given birth perceives that her male partner is not investing in their offspring. Hagen argues that postpartum depression serves as an unconscious strategy to extort parental care from an unwilling caregiver. In this manner, some of the symptoms of a major depressive episode may entail that the mother is unable to perform certain of her functions as a mother, thereby provoking the father to step up and invest more in the offspring.